What is going on YouTube? Back with another video. So in this video, this is regarding Candace Owens, and she feels that somebody has been trying to infiltrate her company. So she is turning to the internet to ask internet sleuths if they can help work out who this guy is, a guy called Brandon Ronneal. She's obviously done a lot of background investigation, and yeah, this is what she's come up with, guys. So all a bit weird.
All right, guys, I will come right out and say that this is not the episode to miss. I am going to share a story with you guys. I've been meaning to get this off of my chest, but what happened to me was so crazy that every 3 months I turn over to my husband and I say, did that actually happen? It's one of those things that we've never gotten an answer to. And now it seems like the most appropriate thing to do is to share the information with everyone and allow everyone to become an internet sleuth, because I think that that might be the only way that we get an answer. So yeah, stick around. All that and more today on Candace Owens. To be honest, I don't even know if there is going to be more on Candace Owens today. I think just this story requires that we unpack it slowly so that you guys have the information. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably going to have to go back and find the YouTube video so that you can take the time to write down the names and to look at the faces that I'm going to bring onto the screen today. So I want you guys to go back to 2020, just after the election. There was madness in the air in America. And obviously, I was extremely busy doing the work that I do, speaking on the ground. But you guys also know that I run a charity called the BREXIT Foundation, and it is very near and dear to my heart. It's probably what I am the most proud of in everything that I've ever accomplished in the political sphere, where we really focus on the inner city communities and helping Black children with various opportunities, Black and Hispanic individuals with various opportunities to just embrace conservative principles. I would almost say BREXIT is an Achilles heel emotionally for me. Well, around, I would say, mid-December, my husband and I received an email from somebody named Brandon Ronneal. I'm going to spell that for you. Brandan, Brandon with an A-N, Ronneal spelled Roneel. In this email that we received, the person was asking whether or not we would be willing to meet for dinner, that they essentially wanted to write a big check for the BREXIT Foundation, and that they had met and had already written a check for Turning Point USA. Now, that was an easy way to get us to respond to the email. Obviously, Turning Point USA, I used to work with that organization for years. At the beginning of my political career, I know Charlie Kirk, who runs it very well, Tyler Boyer, the COO. They're good friends of mine. And so I would say the email passed the sniff test because I just assumed, well, if they know Charlie and they know Tyler, it's a tight conservative circle. This person must be totally fine. Let's go schedule a time to meet with this individual in D.C. Now, before we get further into the story, I want to remind you guys of Operation COINTELPRO. That was a CIA operation which was run for a couple of decades, in which our intelligence agencies essentially went around and they put themselves into various organizations, essentially plants throughout various organizations that they felt were not acting in the part or accomplishing the goals that the government wanted to accomplish. As one example, they put plants in the civil rights movement. That was not something at the time that the FBI wanted to accomplish. They didn't actually want civil rights, right? So they had people that purported to be activists that were in fact operating with the CIA and the FBI. And their job was to essentially get individuals into trouble, right? Just to get them to do something wrong, to record them, maybe to catch them in a compromising position, to get them doing something illegal. And then you could say, look at this organization. They're so bad. Look at this individual. And you'd have the media reporting on it. And hopefully that organization would fold, right? So I'm bringing that up because we have seen various instances where we have questioned whether or not that operation is still going on. Gretchen Whitmer as just one example. Remember, the FBI quite literally inspired an entire plot with Trump supporters to plot to kill Gretchen Whitmer, except the plot came from FBI agents, not from Trump supporters. The FBI agents came up with the plot and then essentially got Trump supporters on the hook and said, oh my God, Trump supporters are so radical and crazy and that they're going to kill Governor Gretchen Whitmer. It's an insane case. If you don't know about it, you should look into it. We also have the same feeling regarding January 6th. It's a lot of unanswered questions, right? We know, as just one example, Ray Epps. The media has entirely no interest in Ray Epps. There's multiple videos of him trying to incite the crowd saying, let's just go march right into there. Let's just go right into the Capitol building. Oh, I'm angry. I'm fired up. Media has no interest in Ray Epps. The Democrat congressmen have no interest in Ray Epps. They're not interested in having him testify and to answer questions about why he was doing that. But your grandma, who maybe walked into the Capitol with the little flag, yeah, they're very interested in her. They want her behind bars. They want all of her information. Another remaining question is who dropped off the pipe bombs on January 5th at the DNC and the RNC headquarters? We're talking about pipe bombs, right, that were dropped off just a couple of blocks away from the White House, the most secure building in the world. And you want me to believe that they just have no leads? They're not even interested, by the way. The media is just not interested in figuring out who dropped off the pipe bombs because, again, it's all about grandma. What was grandma doing in the Capitol building? If you have a coffee lover on your holiday shopping list, you need to check out Black Rifle Coffee. They have all the best brewing gear, thermoses, mugs, and apparel designed for folks who love country and coffee. Black Rifle sources the most exotic roasts from all around the globe. All coffee is roasted here in the United States by a veteran-led team of coffee experts. Stuff your Christmas stockings with the latest roast from America's coffee for 10% off with my code Candace. Better yet, sign your Secret Santa up for a coffee club subscription, a pre-scheduled coffee delivery with your favorite roasts when you need them most. Black Rifle Coffee Company is veteran founded and operated. They take pride in serving coffee and culture to people who love America. And every purchase you make with Black Rifle helps support veteran and first responder causes. So go to blackriflecoffee.com and use promo code Candace for 10% off coffee, coffee gear, apparel, or when you sign up for a new coffee club subscription. That's blackriflecoffee.com with promo code Candace for 10% off. Black Rifle Coffee, supporting veterans and America's coffee. So I'm bringing up Operation COINTELPRO, obviously, because as we get deeper into the story of what happened to me, I wonder if it was, in fact, perhaps a plot from the intelligence agencies, or if I was just dealing with an individual that was crazy and was unhinged. Both of these are an option. Both of these are a possibility, and I want you to decide. So we get this email, and we instantly set up the dinner in D.C. with this individual who we know, really, we think we know from Turning Point USA. I maybe sent a text message to Charlie or Tyler, hey, have you heard of this guy? They were like, oh, yeah, it was great. We met with him at our huge conference at the end of the year, Turning Point. There was an annual huge conference, and he wrote a check. The story checks out. We go to dinner with this individual, and I was very shocked to see how young he was. He was just 22 years old. He explained to me that he was a hyper genius, that he had graduated, and this is throughout dinner, which was about 2 hours long, that he had graduated college when he was 13 years old, that he had multiple PhDs, that he had passed the bar in both California and in New York, and that essentially he was plucked up right from high school and just is one of those people who can write backwards. He actually said that he spoke 9 languages. 9 languages, right? He looked the part, he was ordering wine for the table. And I'm embarrassed to say this, but nothing in my head went, oh, this story isn't adding up, because he was accompanied by his fiance at the time. His fiance was a male, and he was a police officer. And based on the conversation that I was having with his fiance, I thought his story was legitimate. He sounded like a normal blue-collar guy who lived in the Arlington area of Virginia. He had met this man who he thought was so incredible, Brendan Reneel. They were going to get married. And I believed that this fiance of his looked to be in love. It seemed legitimate. And every time he looked over to Brendan Reneel adoringly, he would say, oh, tell them about how you do this. Tell them about how you've accomplished this. I still feel that that individual that was his fiance at least believed this person to be credible. So I didn't really examine the facts of what this person was telling me closer at that moment. I didn't go, oh, actually, if somebody graduated college at 13 years old, they probably would have a ton of press on that. I mean, that would be a huge accomplishment. Also passing the bar in California and New York, having multiple PhDs, working with the United Nations. I mean, he just sort of vomited all of these credentials all over us, and it never registered to me as a red flag. At the end of the dinner, his fiance comes up to me and Brandon Renil sort of gives him a nod, like, now's the time. And they hand us a check. The check is for $250,000 written out to my organization, the BREXIT Foundation. So I'm going to show you a picture of that check right now because it is relevant. That's a picture of me actually holding the check with his name on it, which I am not editing out anything because it's all going to be relevant to the story that I'm going to tell you. You see that it has an address on there. This looks like a real check. We conclude the dinner, and I had had a couple of glasses of wine. I was like, oh, that was so fun. That was great. And oh my gosh, I can't believe this guy is just donating to conservative causes. He explained that he had a ton of money, that he had inherited a ton of wealth for various reasons, all of these projects that he had done. And he had explained to us that he had even worked with the government on some projects. And again, for whatever reason, as embarrassing as I am reflecting upon it, I believed him to be a credible individual after speaking to his fiance. And so we are kind of unpacking the evening, and my husband just looks at me and he's like, nothing about that was right. Nah. And this is, I think, right after we had gotten married. He's like, all of this is just way off to me. There's nothing about his story adds up. I looked at my husband. I went, what do you mean? Turning Point presumably vetted him. They've cashed the check, presumably, and they said that it was fine, that we met with him, And I pulled up his foundation. As you can see, he alleged that he ran a foundation called the Ronil Foundation. So in his own name, you can, when at this time, at least, the website was up, they had various organizations listed on the website that they had alleged that they had donated to, from the Malala Fund to already Turning Point USA was listed. There were all of these different efforts that they were associated with, and the website was real and it was functional. So I said, no, look, this guy actually runs a foundation. There's a website here. And my husband just went, nope, red flags for days. Said, first and foremost, who writes a check in their handwriting for $250,000? It's a good question. I don't know anybody that does that. Usually people will execute a wire above a certain amount. $250,000 is a lot. It's $250,000. And he just wrote it on a check and said, here you go. And then I started going, okay, wait a second. You are totally right. That is sort of weird. And this does require a little more investigation. So I took a look at that check, the one that I've just shared with you. And first I looked up the address, right? Because allegedly, even though this is a personal check, because it did not actually have his foundation listed, which I thought to be odd, I thought, okay, at least we can do a little bit of research and we can look up this address, and this will either be the address to an entire block in DC and he lives in some mansion, or at the very least it will be, an office address and it will be huge. Well, I looked up that address and what returned to me was that it was a WeWork. So that was weird. Who puts a WeWork on a personal check? You're not going to put your WeWork address on your personal check. So that was a red flag. Then I checked out that bank, the SoFi Money. That is a real bank. It was hardly, a bank that somebody that had this much money would keep their cash, an online bank. But okay, the bank sort of checked out. It said it was really designated for, at this time at least, for students with student loans. That was kind of who that bank was pivoting toward. But I said, okay, that part checks out, but there's still something weird here. Why the WeWork? And so I messaged Turning Point USA, the executives over there, and I said, hey, this Brandon Renil guy, just a couple of things not really adding up, and we started talking and we realized that the story that he had given them was different from the story that he had given me. Big glaring differences, as in he had told the people over at Turning Point that both of his parents had died. He had told us that his parents were very much involved in his life. That just didn't add up. It didn't make any sense, right? He was in a gay relationship, but had told one or both of us that he had recently converted to become a Mormon, which would obviously, if you recently converted to Mormonism, you wouldn't then suddenly dive into a gay romance and have a gay fiance. Those, again, just red flags that we instantly went, okay, this is weird. There's something here that isn't adding up. I really hope you can skip this ad. Really, I do, because if you can, that means that you have already divested yourself in one of life's biggest worries, one that keeps many parents up at night. If you can skip this ad, it means you have already found the roughly 5 minutes it takes to secure your children's financial future with Epic Will. Think about that, 5 minutes. You spend more time each day making their lunch. For just $119, Epic Will help you create your will and testament, living will, and even a healthcare power of attorney. Not sure what these words mean? Don't worry. Epic Will make it incredibly easy with a step-by-step online form. All you need to do is fill in the blanks. Trust Epic Will with your legacy, as many of Daily Wire's own employees already have. They're a missional company who, by the way, provides free wills for single mothers with children under 18. I know you love your kids and would do anything for them, so take 5 minutes today to get this done. Go to epicwill.com/Candace for 10% off their service. epicwill.com/Candace. Then next time, you can hit the skip button. So we decided not to cash the check because there were questions that needed to be answered. And then we advised Turning Point not to cash the check and to put a stop on the check if they had cashed it. And fortunately, they had not. So neither of us were cashing the check, and I started researching this guy, and I turned to Instagram, and I saw that he had once spoken in front of the Hawthorne Police. The Hawthorne Police, that's in California, had posted in 2019 that a great friend of theirs, this is what their post reads, "Today, our great friend, 19-year-old Dr. Brandon Reneel," he didn't tell us that he was a doctor, "came to visit Hawthorne Police Department again to speak to our police explorers and share the secret to leadership, success, and amazing motivation." And they use the hashtag youth, the hashtag leadership, the hashtag motivation, because this guy's a success story. And then when you examine the slide that they posted, which is apparently a presentation that was given to them by Brandon Reneel, the slide says, "Who am I? And why am I qualified to tell you this?" Here is who Brandon Reneel at least told them that he was. He said in bullets, he's a son of immigrants, first-generation American, son of a veteran and a cop, graduated college at 13, finished his master's at 17, received his first doctorate at 18, presently pursuing a second doctorate, degrees in psychological science, public policy, and sociology, 3 years of higher education and public relations management, 2 years in government communications, volunteered at the United Nations, 3 United States NATO missions in the past 7 months, currently the senior external affairs strategist to the United States Secretary of Defense and the congressional liaison on NATO and space affairs. Not exactly what he told us, but he claimed to have accomplished all of that by the time that he was 19 years old and somehow got his foot in the door to do this presentation at the Hawthorne Police. You know, something else that he did tell us, which was not mentioned in this, was that he was a professor at UPenn, right? Something very easy that we should have been able to fact check. And so we, again, were just doing a cursory search on the internet, and we did in fact find that there was, at least at some point, a page that was created for Brandon Reneel as an assistant professor at UPenn, but when you hit the link, it was dead. And perhaps even weirder, when you hit the hyperlink, I'm showing this to you guys on the screen right now, you see at the end there, it says Brandon Intel Gov -US. Now, why would that be under the career services? Why would Brandon Intel Gov -US be in the hyperlink under the career services at UPenn? And then why was it no longer a page? Why was the page not functional? Again, more questions than the answers that we had. And we wrote back to him and we asked him for more clarification regarding his foundation, and he did not provide that clarification. In fact, the trail essentially went cold when it came to Brandon Reneel, and we, again, neglected to cash his check. But by then, I was fascinated. The Reneel Foundation at the time did have an Instagram, and I can show you what was on that Instagram. Here is just one picture. It was a picture of him with Dan Crenshaw. Again, if you look at that date, though, November 3rd, 2020. So at the end of 2020, this individual began infiltrating conservative circles. And understanding, of course, that if I saw a picture of him with Dan Crenshaw, a picture with him at the Turning Point USA conference, if I'm talking to Charlie and he says that he's met him, all of us are going to say, okay, this guy seems to be legitimate, right? And because I was so unnerved by the fact that the trail went cold and that we could not find any information on him, I sent a text message to Dan Crenshaw warning him. The irony, by the way, of this text message, which I'm going to appear on the screen right now, show to you guys, is that I sent it on January 5th. Yes, January 5th, the night before January 6th, the night where somebody who we don't know was potentially dropping off bombs over at the DNC and the RNC. They're still looking for who that might be. I sent this exact message to Dan Crenshaw. I included a picture, that picture of him with Dan, and I said, this person, I am pretty sure, is a plant. The foundation is not real, and he is trying to move money through conservative circles. Dan Crenshaw wrote back, interesting, thanks for flagging. I was concerned. I was legitimately concerned that this individual was trying to do something wrong. I mean, what if we all cashed the check? And then there was a story that we were accepting money from, I don't know, Russia, any other country, and suddenly all of our foundations blew up in our faces because they were able to prove that we accepted money from some foreign country when we should not have, right? That is what it felt like to me, that they were trying to make this person give us money so that we would accept it and that we would cash it. Now, again, I don't know if that's true, but I know that a lot of other things began to fall through the cracks. In fact, on his foundation website, if you look at the bottom of it, this website, by the way, is no longer functioning. So I'm showing you things that I fortunately took screenshots of at the time. But there was an address where allegedly his foundation was operating from. That address reads 331 Justison Street, Wilmington, Delaware. Also, a second address, 221 South Clark Street, Arlington, Virginia. Now, what's wrong with these addresses is that when you actually look up these addresses, you'll find out they're just apartments, just little apartments. No way that a multi-million-dollar foundation is operating out of these small apartments. Very strange. Now, it's going to get even stranger. You're not even going to believe this. This has been a hard year on the economy, and that means that essential practical gifts will be in high demand this year. And that's why I'm recommending gifting meat and seafood from Good Ranchers. With discounts on orders of 5 boxes or more, you can save on gifts for the whole family. When you give a box of Good Ranchers, you're giving them a true steakhouse experience with 100% American USDA prime and upper choice cuts of beef, chicken, and seafood. Other meat delivery companies and even your local grocery stores import lower quality meat from overseas. Don't give your friends and family less than America's best this year. And if you're not sure what to order, Good Ranchers now offers gift cards so you can let your friends and family members choose for themselves. Or you can give the gift of a subscription and inflation-proof someone's grocery bill. Go to goodranchers.com and use code Candace at checkout to get $35 off your gift. That's goodranchers.com, code Candace, $35 off. Good Ranchers, American meat delivered. So I kept checking in because it just was always in the back of my mind. What happened? Who was this person? How did he get involved in these conservative circles so quickly? I became especially paranoid when after January 6th and after the plot to assassinate Gretchen Whitmer were revealed to be very shady and nefarious dealings, and ones that I still feel in my soul were entirely plotted by our intelligence agencies. That paranoia grew in my mind, and I would just keep going back and checking Google to see if more information about Brandon Reneel would come up. Well, in June, I checked to see if there was any more information about Brandon Reneel, and suddenly an obituary popped up. And not a real looking obituary. You know, there's tons of obituaries on the web. This one is just as if somebody wrote this entry on obits.com. It reads, Brandon Reneel, born April 22nd, 1999 in Suva, Fiji, died June 17th, 2021 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, USA. And then it reads, Brandon Reneel, age 22 of Arlington, Virginia, died June 17th, 2021 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Services and interment are private. That is interesting. What's more interesting is that every piece that I have just showed you was wiped from the internet. So this guy allegedly runs a huge foundation which suddenly decided to completely stop operations. We can't find any employees that have ever worked here, just completely folded. They decided to wipe the O'Neill Foundation's Instagram, where those pictures of Dan Crenshaw and other conservatives were featured. He essentially just disappeared without a trace. I've looked for articles regarding how he may have died. Usually people, you can find out where the funeral services are. There's nothing. There's absolutely nothing on the web. And this is just beginning. This is just the very beginning of the dark rabbit hole that I have been on for the last 2 years in trying to figure out who this guy was. There is, when you search the internet, and some of you guys may find this because you are internet sleuths just like I am, and I'm hopeful to get more information because it, in retrospect, is so terrifying that I had a dinner with someone who potentially does not exist and never existed, for all I know. I don't believe that an individual named Brandon Reneel may have ever even existed, right? And what you will come across is that there was, at some point, Brandon Reneel LLC, which was in operation. And when you look up the address for that LLC, the address is 1775 Tysons Boulevard in McLean, Virginia, 22102. And when you search that address without Brandon Reneel's name, you find that it is also home to Sovereign AI, which is another company. Sovereign AI is a company that was founded in 2014 by an attorney and former clandestine intelligence officer, Mark Johnson. Sovereign is staffed by Silicon Valley veterans, United States and UK intelligence operators, and product engineers. So they are in the same building, at the very least, as Brandon Reneel LLC, who is very active when you look into him in the McLean, Arlington, Virginia area, which is where we know that a lot of our intelligence agencies are home to. So again, I'm trying not to draw any conclusions, but I'm giving you all of the information so that you can go down the rabbit hole with me and figure out what the heck happened at the end of 2020. Who is Brandon Reneel, BRANDANRONEEL? Was it just a crazy person trying to play catch me if you can, who is now pretending to be dead? Was it a legitimate person, perhaps, who was running a foundation and really did just suddenly decide to give to a lot of conservative organizations leading up to and immediately following the 2020 election, and nobody just cashed his check and he was trying to be helpful, and then he really did just die and people then wiped him off of the internet? Or did the intelligence agencies attempt to plant somebody within our organizations? I don't see how it could be anything beyond those three options. All right, guys, I just gave you a lot. It feels like a weight has been lifted off of my chest, or at least a weight is now